Yes, this is session 4 of a 8-session workshop on story composition, otherwise known as making up stories. The first 3 sessions are recorded and are available for you to see, and hopefully this one will be recorded also. So the first 2 sessions were, where do stories come from? And my answer, our answer was from our experience and from our unconscious. And then the 3rd session, which was yesterday, it seems like a long time ago, but it was only yesterday, dramatic structure, all about suspense and the 3-act model and Joseph Campbell's hero's journey model, all the models. Today is character, creating characters. And then the next 4 sessions, the next 2 weekends, we're going to apply all this thinking to 2 stories, especially. A week from this coming Friday, I'm inviting you all to suggest stories for us to think about. And I'll ask you to send me emails. I'm going to put my email ID in the chat section. You probably know my email ID, but this is one of my IDs. Tell me about a story that you'd like for us to discuss, or it can be, a personal experience story. But it's something that we're going to discuss in terms of the material we've discussed so far. So that will be this coming Friday. Then this coming Saturday, a week from today, we're going to apply this thinking to The Tempest, the play by William Shakespeare, one of my very favorite plays from the time I was a teenager. I once attended 4 straight nights of one particular performance of The Tempest, which was done in street clothing, but I just was transfixed. So that'll be The Tempest. And then the last weekend, we'll apply the thinking to the Tamil epic, the Epic of the Ankle Bracelet. And the final session will apply the thinking to the movie I've written, which I'm trying to get produced, Words from the Forest. And links to summaries of all these 3 stories are on the flyer, which I'll also put in a link to the flyer, which I'll also put in the chat section. So again, if you would like for us to think about a particular story that you've created or that you've experienced or that you've loved, send me an email and it'll be included in the discussion next Friday. Okay, so now about character. Joseph Campbell, if anyone has read The Hero with a Thousand Faces from 1954, was not writing about a hero or heroine going into the belly of a whale or going into a cave and fighting with lions and all. It was all symbolic. It was all representing psychological development, emotional, psychological maturity and transformation, which he saw as happening in stories around the world. And by implication, it's something that each one of us is going through. He was a student of Carl Jung. And Carl Jung spoke of individuation, or that's the English word we have for it, which means becoming aware of and integrating all the different aspects of oneself, and also integrating oneself with the cosmos. So this is what Joseph Campbell was after. He was after not just characters and stories developing and transforming, but each one of us. So, so as I mentioned yesterday, think about yourself or characters in stories you love. How did the character transform? How did the character grow? How did the character rise to the occasion and do things that she thought she would never have been able to do? How did she rise to the occasion? How did she, we have the expression, I didn't think I had it in me. But when the moment of truth comes, sometimes we have it in us. So one of the activities I'm going to invite you to do, and I guess I'm inviting you even right now, I hope you all have a pen and pad nearby. Write about perhaps an experience in your own life where you weren't sure if you had it in you, but you rose to the occasion. You struggled through it, you worked through it, and you achieved what you wanted to. You survived to tell the tale, and you bloomed and you blossomed. Okay, so in terms of making up stories, one very popular way of making up stories is to start with your own experience. So I invite you to, as part of this workshop now of making up stories, look at an experience in your own, a time in your own life when you had a beautiful, powerful transformation, where you rose to the occasion and you came to see yourself and the world differently because of what it turned out you were able to do. Okay, just take a few minutes. I'll stop talking for a little while and just scan your memory for a time when you rose to the occasion. I'm going to start talking, but feel free to continue writing. Don't worry about looking at the screen. This thinking about individuation, of course, that's 100 years old with Carl Jung, but the thinking about applying this to story, this kind of thinking especially blossomed in the 60s and 70s. In Hollywood, there were screenplay gurus. Joseph Campbell was really one of the first screenplay gurus. He was this is of course, a funny term. Guru is appropriated from India. But the people who were hired in the Hollywood world to coach screenwriters. And it's still a very big industry today. But Joseph Campbell was one of the first. He was a friend of George Lucas, who created the Star Wars series. And Star Wars is fully imbued with Joseph Campbell's thinking. The phrase, may the force be with you. That's from Joseph Campbell, because I apologize, people who attended yesterday, there's going to be some repetition here. Joseph Campbell's hero or heroine's journey is that at the beginning of the story, the world is barren. Women are not giving birth to babies, there's no rain, the vegetation is all dried out, and society is in lockdown because the authorities are tyrants. And most people go along with it because they're weak. What can they do? But amongst us are some future heroines and heroes. We just can't stand it. We're not in a position to do anything about it at this point, but at least we can withdraw. We can head for the hills. We can run into the mountains and forests and escape and deprogram ourselves. Or we can jump into the ocean and swim with the belief that Mother Nature will take care of us, and she does. And then when we go on our journey and we find our magical object, which represents the divine, but also our inner selves, our inner source of life and energy. Once we have that, we cannot be stopped. Now the force is with us. And we can go back to where we came from and overcome the tyrant and institute heaven on earth. That's Joseph Campbell's vision. And it's a cyclical story because each liberator in time will become a tyrant, will become rigid and brittle and will have to be overthrown by the next generation. So, so that's his vision of story, and his vision of character is that, well, you know, the psychological reading of character and story is that every character, every object in a story represents a part of us. So if someone's fighting a dragon, that means a part of me is the dragon, and a part of me is trying to overcome the dragon, and that interplay goes back and forth between those two aspects of myself. Oh, I was saying that Joseph Campbell wrote his famous book in 1954, but he became really famous in shortly after he passed away, which I believe was about 1990, because he did a series of interviews with Bill Moyers, The Power of Myth, which aired on U.S. government, public PBS government station. Joseph Campbell was 80 years old when he did it. And I was told yesterday that the series is on YouTube at the moment. So please look up The Power of Myth. It's a summary of his book, which he'd written 30, 40 years before, which was his full statement. But I believe the interviews happened around 1989, and he passed away before the series aired in 1990. So ironic. But when it aired, there was a great appreciation of what he was talking about. But between 54 and 90, as I say, in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of thinking about story, and there was a lot of, it was also the time of the New Age movement, when the New Age movement blossomed, which is a non-religious or non-organized religion, self-development movement, spiritual movement, psychological movement, that is strikingly similar to what many of these screenplay gurus talk about when they're talking about characters in movies. In other words, the transformation, the rising to the occasion that they want to see in movies and characters. This was also something that we should all do, according to me, according to the New Age movement. So the 70s, of course, was a very exciting time psychologically. Does anyone want to share anything about a time when you rose to the occasion and had a transformation within yourself? You know, this is being recorded. It's going to go on YouTube, so I could pause it as people share, or you could just share. What do people? Does anyone want me to pause it while they share, or does anyone want to share, or anyone want to say anything? Let me put it this way. From what has crossed your mind in the last 10 minutes as I've been talking, will you share any of that with us? Yes. Moira, you're nodding your head yes. Will you share what has crossed your mind?
Yeah, but Priyanka has raised her hand for a while. But
That's
I don't
okay,
mind
Moira.
sharing.
Take it ahead.
Okay. So what immediately came to my mind is when I became pregnant at the age of 41. And there was one thing I was sure in my life I would not be able to do, that was to be a single mother. And the result of it is 28 years now. So I think, and friends tell me that I didn't do such a bad job. So this was definitely, I had to rise to the challenge, and I don't mind telling it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Priyanka?
Yes, sure. I would share my personal experience. I also would request Eric if you can shed light, because in the earlier session you mentioned that Laura Sims also started in 70s. You spoke about the New Age movement, which is in 70s. Whenever you get time, if you can talk about the storytelling revival that happened because that was
I'll
also
do it
around 70.
right now, and I'll give you the short version. Part of the 60s revolution was let's get back to the land. Let's get back to people. Let's get away from television. Let's get away from corporate control, because television was controlled by 2 or 3 corporations and the government. So let's get away from all that. Let's get back in touch with ourselves and with people. So it was rebellion against Big Brother. And it was also a rebellion against the Vietnam War that Big Brother had dragged us into. And it was also the blossoming of feminism. And as I say, it was the blossoming of the global revival of storytelling. It was also the blossoming of the New York experimental theater scene, which to me, storytelling is a part of the New York experimental theater scene. So all of that was happening, and one thing that came out of it was that many of the women, of course, mostly women who led the storytelling revival, many of them researched ancient goddesses, including Indian goddesses, and created performances relating to those goddesses. So the feminism, the goddess culture, the storytelling revival, the New Age movement, it was all in a flow together with folk music, Joni Mitchell, Carole King. It was all in a wonderful, exciting package together. And of course, I forgot something else I was going to say, but Laura has been working with the Greek myth of Demeter and Persephone since around that time, the mother and daughter, and how when the mother is distraught, the whole world is fruitless. And when she gets to reunite with her daughter, that's when vegetation starts again. So does that answer a little bit of what you're asking?
Totally, not a little bit.
Very good. A big moment for me in the early 70s, I read a book called When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone, who is or was a archaeologist and art historian. And she showed how, based on the figurines and the sculptures from prehistory, how the matriarchal cultures were overthrown and suppressed by the patriarchal cultures. So I had to come to India to team up with a goddess culture to help reform the patriarchy. That's the story of my fantasy life. As you can imagine, my wife laughs at me. My Indian wife laughs at me over this, but that's my version of my life story. Okay, I'm sorry about that. When anyone else want to share what has crossed your mind in the last 15 minutes?
Eric, if you stop the recording,
Priyanka, you never got a chance to say what you were going to say. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And then Karuna, you want to go before me or?
No, Priyanka.
Okay.
Well, I told my
cool.
story.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, for that light. And my story is from last June. I'm asthmatic because of my genetical reasons from my father's side. Every year, winter, it's a mandate since my childhood that I have to visit the hospital once. And also, I am an atheist, but my parents were not. They made a astrology chart for me where it was written that I'll die from water. So I learned swimming. I faced my the biggest dare I did. I learned swimming. But whenever I encounter with water, I know some kind of something. The water starts playing trick on me, even though I can swim very well. I know that. So last June, I was in Iceland, and there is one particular experience where a person can actually swim between two tectonic plates. And because it's a geothermal area, lots of geothermal activity, and the temperature is like sub-zero. So a person who visits the hospital because of asthmatic reason every year, who has difficulty from water, and who has heard stories of that particular area, people dying from that experience. I thought I would never make it, but I always believe in this particular line. It means "Dar ke aage jeet hai." If you face your biggest fear, there's no fear that's left after it. So I decided I will go, and I really didn't know that whether I will survive that 45 minutes in that claustrophobic position. But when I started swimming, the first 40-50 seconds was really claustrophobic. I was getting choked. I was toppling this side, that side. But once I started viewing, the flora and fauna and the clear water, which has visibility, very clear 100-meter, I forgot everything. I forgot all about my fears. And as Eric said, I rose to the occasion. And then next 45 minutes was a dream come true. Thank you.
Thank you. Shri?
Eric, I would request you to pause the recording. I don't want this to go on YouTube.
We are recording again. So, a character really is a result of story. If you start with a story, there are going to be characters in it, and the nature of the characters will be largely defined by the story. But sometimes characters come to mind before the story comes to mind. So if you want to develop a character who's come to mind, one way to do it is to celebrate the various aspects of the character. According to Carl Jung's vision of personality and many other psychologists' vision, we have many voices within us, many inclinations within us. We have the injured child. We have the joyful child. We have memory of everyone we've ever met become parts of ourselves. We have the supportive voice, the fairy godmother who loves us and says, "You can do it. I'm going to help you do it." And then we all have that voice that says, "You can't do nothing. You might as well give up." So we all have various voices or inclinations within us. Explore and celebrate the diversity of voices and inclinations within a character, even if some of them seem to be contradictory. Some screenplay gurus talk about the difference between a character's wants and needs. A want is that, say, if I'm a character in a story, I want to get my movie made. But my inner need is something deeper and broader and more general. I need to I need to love myself more. I need to achieve, but you get what I'm trying to get at, that a character is conscious of what she wants, but for her development and fulfilling herself and achieving herself, there's certain things that need to happen that she may not even be aware of. So keep in mind that distinction between wants and needs. Also keep in mind the distinction between, in the course of a story, we discover the nature of a character. The character's nature is gradually revealed to us through the story events, as opposed to the character really changing and developing. You see, if the character is just revealed to us, there's been no character development. There's only been a development in our perception of the character. But sometimes there actually is change, development, growth in the actual character. So be aware of that distinction. I mentioned yesterday, there have been times in my life, I remember a couple of moments, I don't even remember the movie I saw, but I came out of the theater and I just felt strong and exuberant. And I have a feeling it was because of a movie where a character, became themselves and rose to the occasion. So if you've ever responded to a work of art that way, it may be because whether the creator of the work consciously or unconsciously followed this pattern of creating a character who rises to the occasion. Certainly that gives us joy, hope, inspiration. Okay. There's talk about a anti-hero. An anti-hero is not a villain. It's just a character who is a little bit out of the mainstream, a little bit rebellious, a little bit, not going along with the program totally. So that can be interesting, especially in modern times. We like to see a character who is going to the sound of her own drum, not going along with the general program. And some people disapprove of what she does. Keep in mind that ideas are not stories. Many times we begin a story with an idea. We have an idea. I want something to happen. Something should happen. I want to create a story that shows it's happening or shows the disaster that will happen. If it doesn't, if my suggestion is not followed, there'll be disaster. If my suggestion is followed, there'll be new life. But ideas alone cannot do that. I mean, if you're just going to work with ideas, then you should be a columnist for a newspaper. If you want to make a work of art, the ideas have to be manifested in characters and situations. There have to be situations where a character is maybe a personification of a certain idea, or a character loves a certain idea. But what we really need is a character who we can identify with and connect with on a human level. Then we have an emotional connection, and where our emotions go, the thinking mind will follow later. If we have a physical experience, so we have an emotional experience, we connect with somebody, we connect with a character, that makes an impression on us, and then we mull over that for a long time. The mulling is the thinking, but it begins with an emotional experience. So you need to, or it's recommended to imagine a situation that is the manifestation of the idea. Anybody, any thoughts have crossed your mind in the last 5 minutes? This is the way I teach and train. I talk for a few minutes and then I say, I don't ask for questions. I don't ask for comments. I ask, what has crossed your mind? And we all know that we cannot talk about 95% of what crosses our mind, right? Because it's too embarrassing or angry, or it's just out of place. So what's the 5% that you can talk about? Anybody? Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm right or not. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So after listening to you, imagine a situation that is manifestation of an idea. So the recent example, I always wanted to be a part or a performer at a storytelling festival. And by chance, I called you and I got a chance to perform. So that was the situation where I actually performed. The idea was manifested into a real life situation.
Mm-hmm. So you took action.
Yeah.
By contacting me, and you sent some very kind and polite.
And you asked if someone has pulled out their name and there is an opening, would you like to do it? And I said yes. Is this what we
That-
are talking about, discussing about?
Yes, as mentioned yesterday, a very popular idea is that a character has an inclination, but at first is not so active. But at a certain point, she commits and she takes action to follow her dream or to follow up something. And that's when the plot thickens. Because up to this point, she's been floating. But when she makes a full commitment to something and takes action, the plot is going to thicken, because at that point, the opportunities will come, dangers will come, and pressure will come, achievement will come. That's called the plot thickens. So I know we're going back and forth between talking about characters and stories and our real lives. But that's
Eric, may I?
kind of workshop this is. Go ahead. Did somebody else want to say something?
Yes, Eric. I just wanted to clarify. So when you said ideas by themselves don't form stories, so what I understood was basically, let's say if I have an idea about environment.
Hold on a second. There's some kind of issue with your sound. Are you connected also by mobile telephone, perhaps?
Yes,
Please turn off your only one device. Do you have
only
two?
mobile phone. I'm connected only through one device. Is it clear now?
Okay. Okay, keep going. But there was some disturbance. But go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. So when you said ideas alone don't form stories, what I understood was if I have to convey a message of saving the environment, if I just put it as an idea, it becomes an essay. But if I create characters and situations and then put forth my idea of saving water or, reduce air pollution. So is that what you meant to say? Like create a story and deliver the message.
A scene where a mother and child are swept away by a flood that's been caused by global warming, and the mother is grasping for the child, and does she able to hold on to the child? You see, that will raise emotions in us, and then maybe it's a mother and child, maybe it's a husband and wife, but we need characters who go through the process of the result of the problem that you're identified. We don't want to just hear about the problem unless it's a newspaper column. If it's a story, we want to see what these characters we want to feel what these characters are going through. You know, obviously, we identify with characters, we project ourselves into them. We basically, on an imaginary level, we think we are them. So when they're in the middle of a situation, we feel we're in the middle of the situation. And we want to know what's going to happen, because we want to know what's going to happen to us, because we are them. So yes, we need characters who go through the situation. Does that reply to your question?
Yes, Eric. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're getting close to the two-thirds point. As I mentioned yesterday, in terms of structure, there's a very strong consensus that an exciting story needs to, about two-thirds of the way through or three-quarters of the way through, it seems all is lost. The character is overwhelmed by some loss or disaster. And it's a real moment of truth, because some characters would be crushed and would not survive it. But in our story with our heroine, she manages to recover. She has the resilience to work through it, and then in the final climax, triumph. But look out for that darkest hour of the night, that moment when all seems to be lost. I had it myself a couple of weeks ago in my real life. My computer, which I'm joyfully communicating with you through now, suddenly stopped working. It turned out the motherboard or some essential board just stopped working. They still don't know why. And I was at Nagercoil in the countryside. So for a week, I had to use other computers, and I was trying to get this festival together. I freaked out. I can't tell you. I use Apple computers. I went to an Apple shop in Nagercoil. They couldn't do anything. I had to wait till I came back to Chennai, and they had to order the part, the circuit board or whatever it was. And now for the last 2 weeks, I've been able to recover. But I backed up like 6 weeks ago. So a month of my work preparing for this got lost. So, oh my God. Fortunately, a lot of it I'd uploaded to the internet, but I was not using the cloud. I don't know this cloud thing. So I back up to 2 external hard drives once in a while. And as I say, I did it 6 weeks ago, but a month was lost. So that was a very strong all is lost moment for me. But luckily, with a lot of support, including my Apple shop in Chennai, they told the supply people in Mumbai, I guess it was, that a very big VIP is going to be leaving India in a couple of days, and we need to fix his computer before he leaves. So they got the part in like 2 days. Tremendous. So that was part of the recovery process. But you hear what I'm saying about the all seems to be lost? I could ask you, have there been moments in your lives where all seem to be lost? And obviously you lived through it, you lived to tell the tale, here you are. But when that happens, man, it's a ton of bricks. Okay, I'm not going to ask any of you to share about that, but you might write about it. Again, with the idea of writing about your own experience that maybe sometime you might project onto a fictional character. Okay, the second and last activity I'm going to invite you to do now is think about a character, either that you've created or in your favorite movie, or some character who's on your mind, or it can be a character from your memory. Or a character that you've created in your imagination. I have a surprise. One's memory and imagination are almost the same thing. Because the way one remembers things, by the time you remember it, you've turned it into a fantasy. So human beings are not capable of any kind of objectivity. We see everything through the filter of our personality. So is there a character in your memory, your imagination, your favorite movie, who you'd like to have a little conversation with, you'd like to have coffee with, and you'd like to ask that character, how are you feeling? Thank you for visiting with me. You might have a question for that character, or that character might have a question for you. So this is a chance to, compare notes about life with this character. And you can ask the character, how you feeling? What do you want? Are you still after what you were after in that movie? Or have things changed? Have things developed? So I'm suggesting do a little role play between yourself and a character you're interested in. And, ask the character, how are you doing? What are you doing these days? What do you want these days? How do you feel these days? Are you happy with your place in the world? And the character might ask you the same questions. So write out this little role play, and I have a surprise for you. When you do it, it's as if you're writing a play or a script for a movie. When you role play, when you speak to an imaginary character and you speak on behalf of both yourself and the imaginary character, you're writing a play with 2 characters in it. One is you, and the other is this character that you'd like to talk to. So, so go ahead. I'll stop talking for a little bit. Identify this character that you'd like to have a discussion with, you'd like to have coffee with, compare notes about life, and write a little bit of the dialogue that happens between you and the character. June, are you driving or are you a passenger? Well, your voice is muted and it's just as well because I'm always afraid when people are driving.
I am a passenger.
Thank goodness. No, because I'm a very excitable person, and I sometimes I excite people, and people have been known to drive into a ditch when they're listening to me talk.
Well, a few years ago, I was practicing stories while I was driving and went through a stop sign and decided that was not a good idea anymore.
Very good. Yeah, if you don't have a pen and pencil in hand, just imagine the conversation.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do.
Mhm. Would anyone like to share a few exchanges in your conversation? And let me know if I should pause the recording. Deepa, thank you. Go ahead. You got to turn your mic on.
So I'm always fascinated by successful women.
Mhm.
And there's one lady whom I am in awe of, and I try to imbibe as much as I can from her. So I would like to ask her, how can you do so much? How can you be always happy, chirpy? And the lady replies, just the way you do it. I hardly do anything. And she says, don't demean yourself for your work. But how do you overcome the daily chores, the struggle of doing the daily chores, and how can you be so successful? And she says, think about it. You are also trying to do the same. And yeah, I can continue further, but this is what I've
I get the
written
picture.
as of now.
So you're interested in the theme of life-work balance, especially the challenge that women face in relation to that.
Yes.
Okay, so you might want to create a story where there's a woman who gets overwhelmed by all the demands, and then what happens next? Does she does she quit her job? Does she leave her family? What might happen? Different things could happen. Explore all the different possible ways that she might try to get out of the problematic situation. So you've identified a problematic situation, and now you
Yes.
want to play with the characters and the events to explore. See, a story can either be an inspiration or a warning. It's a warning if characters, fail. So the warning is to the listeners and the readers and the viewers: don't fall in the trap like this character did.
Okay.
But then you might also want to give an inspirational story about how a woman resolved the conflict and thrived. And of course, it's not just a personal story. This is a social. Has to do with society,
Yes.
family demands, work demands, husband demands, children demands. So you're exploring an aspect of society, and you're a social reformer. You would clearly you'd like to see things improve in certain ways for women, as many of us would. So okay, so you have some ideas about how you could play with this in terms of characters and situations and plot lines.
Okay.
Anyone else want to tell us about the character you were interested to have a conversation with? Jeff, I imagine you'd be talking to an ancient bard.
Several, actually.
Excellent. Having a conference. Very good. Okay, well, I posted into the chat room.
There was a show, I think in the 70s.
Go ahead. Yeah, there's some kind of buzz going on.
There was a show in the 70s called Meeting of the Minds that Steve Allen wrote.
Yep.
And every week they would have 4 or 5 historical personages come on and have like round robin discussions on different things. And when I do stuff like this, I kind of tend to do that. I'll have 3 or 4 people or characters come in and we like have a joint conversation together.
Yeah, so this is a way of just seeing what's on your mind. What characters are on your mind? What social issues are on your mind? And along the way, you might discover you want to say something. You got a point, you got a message, but you can't just, hit people over the head with a message. You've got to create a story that manifests the whole thing. Lalitha, please, to turn your mic on. I'm sorry, I had to turn it off. Please turn it on again.
So I just wanted to have a conversation with Mr. Dodsworth, and this is a character in Pink Refrigerator, story by Tim Egan. So Dodsworth goes off on a exploration after leading a very, very mundane life of this, and just so this.
Oh, I'm sorry. You lost your connection there. I was moving around the squares. Hopefully she'll come back. She mentioned a Mr. Dodsworth. Is that a character in a novel? What novel?
I can't remember she mentioned the name of the novel, but it was like I have never heard of the name.
Okay, hopefully she'll come back. Okay, so in the chat room, I put my email ID, I put the link to the recording of the first session, and on that page with the recording of the first session, the recordings, it also has the links to the recordings of sessions 2, 3, and soon it'll have the recording of this session. So any YouTube page you go to with one recording of a session of one of these sessions, it'll have the links to the other three. Lalitha, please go ahead. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. Please tell us about, now you mentioned a Mr. Dodsworth. You got to turn your mic on again.
So I just small conversation was after very relaxing life, just in front of your TV and just make maths for such a long time. Exploring the topics as well. It's different but interesting. What is so interesting about it? Also,
Lalitha, your voice is breaking up.
in case you visited Mr. Dodsworth.
Yeah, you're having a connection issue. If you can, paste it in, write it and paste it into the chat section or send. But somehow your voice is breaking up too much. We can't hear you. Okay, well, shall we say good night and good morning? Let me see if I have any final thoughts. I just want to repeat what I said in the beginning. What we're really talking about is psychological development and transformation of story characters and each of us. The life journey, you know, journey is a very popular metaphor for life, right? The life journey is can be seen as being all about a maturation process, which means a transformation process. We may start out immature, self-centered, short-tempered. You hear I'm talking about myself. And then hopefully, we'll work through it and end up wise. And that's what we want to see, right? And if we see it, we find that inspirational, and we want to see that movie. We want to be that movie. Anybody, any thoughts, final thoughts crossing your mind?
I just wanted to ask one question, Eric, that when we are creating a story, when we are writing a story, many times, sometimes it will be fictional story also. So the protagonist, to the struggles that he or she goes through, do we have to feel all that? And at some point of time, sublimely, do we bring our own struggles into that character? Unconsciously, subconsciously, do we do that?
Usually, inevitably. We only imagine a character in a situation because unconsciously we are living through that situation already in our mind. We can't let go of it. We're stuck in it. We need to work through it.
But
So,
there are times when we create characters based on people around us also, not we alone, right?
of course. But we are interested in those people because we can relate to those people, and by the time that those people are in your memory and imagination, they can be considered a part of you. And they can be considered, you know, to be a character in a story.
Thank you.
Okay, so please email me if you have a story in mind that you'd like to for us to explore next week in terms of character, structure, where the story may have come from, all of the above. We're talking about your stories next week, and then William Shakespeare's story, and then the Tamil story, and finally my little story. Okay. So shall we say good night and good morning?
Yes, good night.
I'm stopping.
I still remember 2021. You had round the clock. I used to wonder when you used to sleep. We wanted to attend all the USA tellers midnight, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and all that. Thank God you're closing it at 10 p.m.
That's right. I'm getting old. Okay, bye-bye.